Good afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting for one moment before we start. We'll be starting very shortly. Let me go ahead and get us started. My name is Diane Randall. I am the General Secretary of the Friends Committee on National Legislation. I want to welcome everyone to this webinar on this really important and topic of addressing child poverty in such a profound way. So we have a great speakers here with us today. And I'm going to start off just by saying thank you to Bread for the World, to the American Friends Service Committee, Network Lobby, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, the Jewish Federation of North America, the Network of Jewish Human Service Agencies, and the National Latino Evangelical Coalition for sponsoring this webinar today. So on July 15th, families across the country are going to start receiving checks of $250 per child for children over age 6 and up to $300 per child for children under age 6. These are going to go to all families, regardless of income. What a profound impact this will have on families throughout our country. We want to make sure that every family who is eligible, every parent can claim these credits. And we want to ensure that these credits won't expire at the end of this year. So this next hour, we're going to tell you how this is going to get done. It's my great pleasure to introduce now the Reverend Eugene Cho. Reverend Cho is the president and the CEO of Bread for the World, a Christian anti-hunger advocacy organization. He is going to open us with a few words of prayer, and then he will be introducing Gene Sperling.
Diane, thank you so much. And thank you for your leadership and your steadfast presence. I want to also join Diane and others in welcoming and really thanking all of you for coming to this webinar, especially as we're learning about this historic expansion of the child tax credit. I am delighted that even as I'm looking at my screen, more and more people are joining in on this call. Now, in addition to all the distinguished speakers that we have, and I do hope that you'll stick around for each of their presentations, but also some of the questions and answers. But I want to again amplify what Diane shared because some things need to be repeated. The child tax credit has the potential to cut child poverty in the United States by nearly half. I admit when I first heard that, I couldn't believe what I was hearing and needed to do a deeper dive. So let me say it one more time. The child tax credit has the potential to cut child poverty in the US by nearly half. It's rare that a single policy has the power to dramatically and unquestionably make such a difference across the board. It could do more to reduce poverty among our nation's children than any single policy has in decades. Caring for the faith or caring for the most vulnerable, regardless of what our faith backgrounds might be, that's what brings us together today during our call. And so with that in mind, if I may, not trying to infringe on others, I would love to invite you to join me in prayer as we begin. So let's pray. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18, verse 4-5, it simply reads, "And whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me." So God, as we speak about hunger and poverty, remind us that these are not merely numbers and statistics, but rather convict us again that each child, each person is created in your image, deserving of worth and dignity. Lord, give us deep empathy, moral clarity, and courage. Help us to stay present, be prayerful, and compel us to action, to be active participants in your kingdom here on this earth. May the presence and power of the Holy Spirit convict us to put our faith into action, strengthen each of us to speak up for those whose voices are not heard and their plights ignored. May we be a people marked by justice, mercy, and humility. And God, we also do pray for our respective lawmakers. Move and stir their hearts. Awaken them with your righteousness and mercy so that rather than partisan politics, they would prioritize the humanity and reality of the hungry, the poor, and vulnerable in our nation and even around the world. In Christ's name we pray, amen. Well, friends, it is my honor to introduce Gene Sperling, White House American Rescue Plan Coordinator and Senior Advisor to the President. I believe, thank you so much, Mr. Sperling, for joining us on this webinar. I know that you're extremely busy, and I think the last time your video was on, you were in a car going from point A to point B. And so we welcome you again. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Can you make sure we take 66 as opposed to GW? Okay, thanks. Thank you so much. I am, excuse me 1 second. So thank you so much for having me. I hope you will appreciate the strains of family life, because I am still living in Santa Monica. And so I am commuting back and forth from the White House, and I am going to be here all next week. And so this is actually as I'm on my way to the airport to be back with my family for a few days before I'm gone for another good spell in the West Wing. But thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the sentiment and agree with the gravity and importance of what we have the ability to do. I was talking to the New York Times journalist Jason DeParo, who has worked on these issues for a long time. And he reminded me that we've never had a fall in child poverty greater than 10% in a single year. It's never gone down more than 10% in a single year. So whether it ends up being 50% or 38 or 45%, there is no question that the child tax credit is going to be historic this year. And why we cannot be satisfied to just have this be a one-year policy. There is not one person on this call who for 1 second who thinks our goal should be to have the greatest drop in child poverty followed by the greatest increase in child poverty, because we could not continue the child tax credit. So let me just give a moment on what it is and what the great progress we've made, the great opportunity, and also then some of the challenges we face in helping the people we want to. So the simple news is that this is the largest child tax credit ever. It is, as was said, $3,000 per child, 6 to 17, and it recognizes that the cost of raising children when they're young is higher, so it's $3,600 for children under 6 years old. So that itself is significant, dramatic, and historic. Secondly, all tax cuts given to people have always been ones that your tax cut for 2021, you got the next year when you were filing taxes. One thing that I love about our president, even though it makes him an appropriately demanding boss, is that he asks all the time, but how do people get it? Do they understand it? Does it help them in their lives? So we realized that in this period of COVID particularly, this tax cut had to start helping people this year. And in a way that payments that will start in July. Now, the legislation did not require monthly, it just said periodic. We could have done it twice every 3 months and we would have met the statute. But we ensured that it's going to be monthly, and we're doing something that's really never been done before. We're ensuring that you're going to get it on the same day every month. So if you use direct deposit, which 80% of tax filers do, you're going to get this on the 15th of every single month. That will be one of the best government service, easy to understand benefits that's ever happened. The 15th of every month, you will get this tax credit if it's direct deposit. And even if you're doing by check at a home or so at an address, you'll still get it at about the 15th of every month. So we're very proud of that. And we think the fact that, many people predicted that this could be like something that wouldn't work, that you couldn't pass a law in March and have it actually operating monthly for the first time in July. But just watch, it's going to happen. It's going to go smoothly. It doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect or we have every wrinkle resolved. That's going to take some time. But the basic notion that on July 15th, that 35 to 40 million families with children will get a benefit that goes to 65 million children is going to happen. And so that is a huge accomplishment, and we're proud of that. And the president will be personally highlighting that. Now, then there's the question of what makes this so special. What makes this so special is that it's the provision that is most like Social Security in the following way. Social Security is a lifeline for middle class families, upper middle class, lower middle class, all families. But it is also the most important policy we have for fighting elder poverty. This is going to be similar because it's going to be the most important economic security protection for all working families, all the way up the middle class to 150,000. And yet this same policy is going to be the greatest tool we've had against child poverty. Now, this works a couple of ways. The first way it works, and the most directly, is that today, 23 million, over one third of children getting this benefit do not get the full benefit today. That's 35% of all children. That's 50% of minority children. That's almost over 60% of children in a single parent family. Now, that is just economically and morally questionable. If you have a child tax credit, why would you give less to the families that are struggling the most to make ends meet to raise their children with dignity and opportunity and security? So the main way that this is going to lift poverty is that 23 million low-income children are going to get the same tax credit as the family making $120,000. And not only are you getting the same, but it's going to be larger. So let's think about it. If you were a low-income family, a minimum wage family, and you had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, you would probably be getting about $1,200 a piece. You wouldn't be getting the full credit. It might be like $1,000 a piece, while other families would be getting $2,000. So that family that might have been getting $2,000 will now get $3,600 a piece because it's a loan. So think about it, $2,000 to $7,200 for those two children. This is extremely significant. So those 23 million children, they're going to get the benefit automatically. Next, we come to the next test, though, is that there still are going to be a number of children, could be about 5 million, could be a little more, could be a little less, but children who are not signed up. And this is like the challenge we all have to face. I mean, let me give you another family example. Imagine a couple with a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 12-year-old. If they sign up for the child tax credit, they will get $9,600. Think about that for a poor, struggling family. But that's not the end of it. By signing up for the child tax credit, they would also get both of the stimulus payments that they missed this year, which is $2,000 a person. So can you imagine, for that lower income family, that would be $19,600. I mean, that's just game changing. I don't know, but would it make a huge difference in the security and the housing stability and the nutrition of that family? Yes. So we have an obligation to try to sign up every family. So I'll tell you what we've done good, that we feel good about, and where the challenges still remain. When I started this job, the IRS was not going to have what's called a non-filer portal for the child tax credit. That's a portal that allows somebody to sign up for the child tax credit without having to do a full tax return, without having to do a 1099 or a W-2. We pressed, and the IRS now has, for the first time in 22 years, a non-filer portal for the child tax credit. So it is much easier to get a family to sign up. They would need Social Security or ITIN numbers, address, email, but they would not need all the things you need to file for taxes. So that really helps. Secondly, go to childtaxcredit.gov. We created this, the Biden administration. This is a simple website that can be in English or Spanish that explains the child tax credit, that lets a low-income family know that getting the child tax credit will not affect your benefits. It does not account against you. It's not going to mean you get less SSI, less SNAP, less SSDI, less housing assistance. That is really important. It's in English, it answers questions, and then it links to the official non-filer portal. So those are two good things we've done. But here's still the challenge. The IRS portal is still not good enough. You can't do it by phone. We don't have Spanish on it yet. We're pushing and pushing. So one, it's not as good as we'd like, but we'll keep pushing them to make it better. Secondly, these are families that did not sign up for 3 consecutive stimulus payments. I do not want to suggest it is going to be easy. These are families that have resisted not only filing their taxes, but even using a non-filer portal. So I think this is where our work really comes in. I don't think this is going to be about just putting up posters. I don't think this is going to be about just advertising. I think this is going to be about trusted people helping people sign up. It's going to be about using community centers and churches and temples and synagogues and any place where a trusted person can tell a person why they need to sign up and help them. Because I don't want to pretend it's easier than it's going to be, but I believe we can do it. I'm talking to groups all over the country that want to do this right. So you could play a huge role because you've got the capacity to be the trusted messenger and to be a touch. Somebody can help a person in person sign up. And if we do, it could be life-changing. If we make the child tax credit permanent, that family I mentioned would get $96,000 over the next 10 years that they're leaving on the ground. I mean, that is heartwarming, but it's heartbreaking to think of that family not getting that support. So this is not just a sprint, it's a marathon. We got to stay at it, and we got to look for every moment. The first July 15th, back to school, every opportunity. And we want to hear from you what's working, what's not working, so we can have as strong and on the ground strategy as we can to sign up more millions of children. If we can sign up every child, then I think the chances that we actually reduce child poverty by half become extremely strong. So thank you so much for having me. And this is not one and done. I am happy to be on this call anytime. I'm happy to work with groups. I'm happy to get people to do train the trainers. This is not like some little outreach thing. This is our passion, our cause. It's why we're here. And I am happy to engage as much as possible. I wish I could see everybody out there, but there's rumors that I see some old friends, Dave Beckman, Jim Wallace, are signed up. I'm sure there's so many more people I know, and I can't wait till we can all meet together in person and have this conversation. So thank you.
Dean Sperling, thank you so much for that enthusiastic report directly from the White House for your work as a senior advisor to the president. We have some great speakers who are going to pick up on some of the themes that you have highlighted for us, and we're thrilled to have you with us. Have a good flight. We will be back in touch when you get back, and stay on as long as you can, but thank you so much for being with us today. I neglected to say at the beginning that this event is being translated into Spanish, and so just a reminder that speakers be aware of that, and we do support and encourage the work that the White House is doing to assure that this portal and the IRS opportunities are also available in Spanish and probably other languages perhaps. Right now, I'm going to turn this over to Reverend Gabriel Salguero. Gabe is a colleague and does great work as the president and founder of the National Latino Evangelical Coalition. This is a network of Hispanic and evangelical congregations, pastors, and nonprofits that are committed to gospel-centered service, advocacy, and leadership development. They offer an important voice for the nearly 8 million Latino evangelicals in our country. Reverend Salguero.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Mr. Sperling, for that overview and highlights, and of course, our dear friend, Reverend Eugene Cho at Bread, and all the partners who are on this call. And thank each of you for taking time out of your day for this important informational webinar. As you've heard, my name is Gabriel Salguero, or Gabe Salguero. I'm the president and founder of the National Latino Evangelical Coalition. There are close to 10 million Hispanic evangelicals, according to the last census, and there are 60 million Latinos plus living in the United States. 1 out of every 4 children born in the US is Hispanic, and 1 out of every 2 children born in the US is a child of color. And so to us, the child tax credit is a gift. 1.7 million Latino children will be brought out of poverty because of this. And it will bring over 4 million Latino children closer to escaping poverty. And so this is significant for our community, and for that we're thankful. NALEC, the National Latino Evangelical Coalition, has been a part of advocating for the permanency of the child tax credit, as we've also worked on the American Rescue Plan, excuse me, and the earned income tax credit, because we really do think it is a significant contribution to reducing poverty in general and child poverty in particular. We are thankful that the Social Security numbers of mixed status communities will also impact 2.2 million more children. And so let me tell you a little bit about what NALEC, the National Latino Evangelical Coalition, is doing to augment and put a megaphone on this significant legislation. I will say again, I think our colleagues are going to repeat it over and over. We are part of the chorus of people who are advocating for permanency of the child tax credit. But in the present, here's what we've done. We have had national webinars, both in English and in Spanish, particularly to help people who have not filed with the IRS, W-2s or 1099s. And this has happened through trusted brokers. NALEC has a Grass Tops and Grassroots campaign, and this is important. Grass Tops meaning trusted Latino, Latina pastors who have advocated for CTC and EITC to speak in their congregations, in their radio programs, in their television programs, and in their weekly sermons about it. But also a grassroots campaign. Years ago, we worked with the Affordable Care Act, ACA, and what we had were grassroots mobilizers in each congregation, separated through regions. At that time, we had 10.4 million Latinos uninsured or underinsured. And this mobilization of promotores or promotoras helped us get the message out in the base how to access this. Because the reality is that for many people who did not file with the IRS, they think wrongly that they are not eligible for this. And part of that is making sure that the Grass Tops and Grassroots leaders are echoing this message that yes, they are eligible. And yes, there is a portal. The reality is that although it is only in English, we're having people serve as Sherpas in the local faith-based communities to help them navigate the complexity of what our brothers and sisters call la burocracia cibernética. La burocracia cibernética, the cybernetic bureaucracy. And so we're trying to do our best in that regard. One of the areas, Mr. Sperling, as you spoke, there's some challenges, has been our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico that have some distinct challenges when it comes to CTC and how it applies. There is a large percentage of Puerto Rican citizens on the island of Puerto Rico who have not filed with the IRS and are not familiar with the non-filer portals. And so our Puerto Rico chapter is working together with our mixed status families to help them understand that they too qualify. the reality is that we at NALEC and our sisters and brothers in this kind of interfaith coalitions understand this, that this is a moral mandate for us, that as we treat the most vulnerable among us, mostly children and vulnerable families, so is the moral standing of our nation. And so we are committed to this. From the advocacy side, we were committed to it, and now from the implementation side. We're continuing to translate much of the documents that comes out of the IRS in one-page executive summaries or from the White House, and we send that out in our newsletters to our faith-based communities to have it in a digestible way. And then we couple that newsletter with the trainings on the webinars. And so those are a few of the case studies that we're doing, and we stand committed to continue partnering with that. With that, I thank you, and I'm looking forward to hearing best practices from everyone else.
That's great. And can I just ask Amelia and Sergio, who are helping staff this, that if there are resources available that the listeners, participants want to have access to, that we can put those in the chat or figure out a way to get those out to people, because it sounds like you're doing some terrific work that will be so valuable. Again, we're looking at two different types of advocacy. One is the immediate advocacy that Mr. Sperling talked about, and you're going to hear more about, is to get people signed up to get access to these benefits now, as soon as we possibly can. And the second one we'll talk about a little bit later, which is to assure that these tax credits are extended beyond this year. Now, I want to turn this over to introduce Reuben Rotman. He is the president and CEO of the Jewish Human Service Agencies, an international membership association, more than 140 nonprofit human service agencies in the USA, Canada, and Israel. They provide a full range of human services for the Jewish community and far beyond. The network strives to be a leading voice for the Jewish human service sector. Thank you, Mr. Rotman, for joining us, and please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Gabriel, Jean, everybody who's here with us today. I want to echo the previous presenter, Gabriel. A lot of what we have been doing is all about outreach and making the materials as user-friendly as possible and translating the maze of bureaucracy that sometimes isn't there, but the clients who we work with just simply, tune out and are concerned. Our network consists of about 140 community-based nonprofits, primarily throughout the US, that are working with individuals and families of all ages and all life cycle circumstances. We're providing mental health counseling, we're providing a full range of employment services, and we're providing comprehensive case management and financial assistance and advocacy support. So the individuals that we work with were especially hard hit during COVID. And like so many other faith-based communities that provide services beyond their faith, we began to see populations, not only in our local communities, but nationally, connecting with our service agencies through virtual online platforms. And throughout, the calls range from the need for support, the need for guidance, the need for handholding to navigate resources, and also very concretely around emergency assistance and food insecurity. So we did a brief update survey a few weeks ago, and we're able to learn that during COVID, just a survey of our US-based membership, 91% of our agencies saw a dramatic, significant increase, over 75% increase in requests related to food insecurity. Another 84% saw dramatic increases related to emergency financial assistance. So as Gabriel mentioned, we've been spending time making sure that the materials from the IRS and the White House are getting out. We've been putting them into our newsletter. We've been discussing them, the content with affinity groups within our network. We've also been making sure on the local level that agencies are translating the materials and having every point of contact, whether it be virtual, through the phone, or in person, if they know the client has a child, making sure that they are aware of what this resource is and connecting them with the information needed. It's very time consuming, it's very hand holding, it's very grassroots, but that's what needs to happen. I want to give a shout out to our member agency in Los Angeles. Jewish Family Service Los Angeles sent me just a brief summary of what they've done over the last several weeks. Again, materials sent out to all JFS programs to be shared with their clients, English and Spanish flyers going into grocery bags that are distributed through their food pantry program. Again, going through their domestic violence shelter program, also in English and Spanish, and through their counseling center, case managers, and their core intake staff. Letting every staff member who knows that there's a child on the caseload within the family, making sure that the parents and the guardians understand what the resource is. They're continuing to update at staff meetings, and you know, having resources like this available as well for staff is important. There are some challenges, though, that I think we're all aware of that I think I do want to point out. One is the timing of all of this, because it's this wonderful historic resource is coming at the same time that eviction moratoriums at the local, state, and federal level are scheduled to be ending. And while some have been extended, it's not uniform. So those details are all over the place, and it's challenging for staff and clients to navigate changing guidelines and what's happening and what isn't happening. The other dynamic that's happening is that we're still in this COVID, post-COVID, virtual, in-person, with the masks, without the masks, transitioning through all this flux and navigating yet this resource at the same time is an added burden, not only for the agencies, but certainly for the clients that we work with. The last point, which I think is something that we all need to think about, is that these resources, and I heard from Gene because he mentioned this, they've really worked at the White House and in the IRS to make them as client-centered as possible, as consumer-facing as possible. So our staff can spend time with an individual navigating what are the entitlements that are out there, what are the resources, given your family demographics, the ages of your children, this is what you're eligible for with the stimulus, with the child tax credit, with the enhanced pandemic EBT resources, with enhanced SNAP levels that many states have available. You know, families need help to put that all together. And I think it makes the job of the case manager a little bit more challenging. But if we had one portal where somebody could work through all that at the same time, that would be a tremendous resource. So with that, that's our overview. A lot of hand-holding, a lot of navigation, but tremendous gratitude for this resource coming and working in partnership with our other faith partners to get it out to the communities.
Thank you, Ruben. And just want to lift up the tenacity of families and individuals who are pursuing these tax credits. We had some chat in the chat already, but also, you know, a big shout out and gratitude to case managers and social workers throughout the country that are helping navigate this, to the churches, social service agencies. Really, this is obviously really important. I'm really pleased that Elisa Minoff is here to share with us a little bit about more details of exactly how to make some of the applications, particularly for people who haven't filed taxes. So Elisa is a senior policy analyst at the Center for Study of Social Policy, and she's going to walk through this portal that we've talked about for people who haven't filed taxes and share more details about that. And also, I think there have just been a couple of other questions, and Elisa, if you've seen those, you can pick up on them, and we really appreciate that. And if you have additional questions, please put them in the chat.
Hi, everyone. I'm just getting this PowerPoint up and running. It's been great to see the questions coming in, and I will try and touch on all of the ones I've seen so far. If I don't catch the ones that come in during my presentation, I'll make sure I go back to the Q&A and look at them afterwards. So as Diane said, my name is Elisa Minoff. I work at the Center for the Study of Social Policy. We are a national organization working on federal policy, and we also work very closely with families and in communities to advance policies that promote economic and racial justice. And with our partners at the Children's Defense Fund, we've launched the Automatic Benefit for Children Coalition, the ABC Coalition, to push for a child allowance. And have been very excited about the progress made so far this year to expand the child tax credit and really ensure that families have that monthly support that they need to help with the cost of raising kids. So as Diane said, you've already heard a lot about sort of the outlines of this policy. I'm going to use the few minutes I have to really dig in and go through who is eligible for this benefit and how they can sign up. So I'm going to just skip over a few of my slides here that has some background information that's already been covered and start by talking about who's eligible. So in order to be eligible, you must have a qualifying child. That means you need to have a child who's living with you for more than half of the year, that is 6 months or more of the year. A child who's under 18 by the end of this year, as in they're 17 or under by the on December 31st, 2021. And they need to have a particular relationship with you. Basically, they need to be your child, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew, and there's certain other relatives, but they need to be a relatively close relative of yours, and they need to have a social security number. Now, as Dave mentioned, it's really important to note that it's only the child here who needs to have the social security number. Mixed status families are eligible for this credit if one or more of their children have a social security number. The parents who are filing can file with a tax identification number, an ITIN. They do not need a social security number. It's only the child who needs to have a social security number. That's why when you're talking to families in your communities, you're talking to immigrant families, it's incredibly important to emphasize that if they are eligible for this credit, they should sign up. The child tax credit, like other tax credits, will not affect someone's immigration status. Child tax credits are not considered when determining whether someone's likely to be a public charge. So families who are eligible should sign up, and most immigrant families are eligible. The only families who are not eligible are families with children who do not have social security numbers themselves. That's approximately 1 million children. And we're working really hard to make sure that those children are included in any legislation that extends this policy. In order to be eligible for credit, families need to have incomes under a certain threshold in order to receive the full credit, but they do not need to have earnings. And this is important because people know, oh, it's a tax credit, I have to file my taxes. I assume I only file my taxes if I work. But in this case, you want to file your taxes or go to the sign up portal, even if you have $0 in income, because you can still get the child tax credit. When talking to families in your communities, there are a few questions that come up all the time, have already come up in the chat, and I just want to answer them right away. The first question we get frequently is, will this affect my other benefits? This is because this is a tax credit, it's not counted as income when determining eligibility for other federally funded benefits. That means it will not affect Family SNAP, it will not affect their TANF, it will not affect their Section 8 voucher, it will not affect their SSI. So if you're receiving, if a family is receiving federally funded benefits, the tax credit will not affect those benefits. They'll still receive exactly the same amount they've always received. If the benefits are state funded and only state funded, it's possible the tax credit could affect those benefits. But for the most part, most of the benefits families get are at least partially federally funded. And so this does not affect their benefits. The second question we get a lot, and again, we've already gotten in the chat, is will families have to pay this back? And the answer to that is a little bit more complicated, but generally no. So if a family's circumstances have not changed from the previous year, if they don't change from 1 year to the next, they will be eligible for the same tax credit that the IRS thinks they're eligible for. They won't have to pay any money back. So if your income doesn't go up, if you have the same number of kids in your house this year as you did last year, you won't have to pay any of this money back because the IRS is estimating your payments and they're estimated correctly as long as your circumstances don't change. Now, if your circumstances do change, for example, if a child leaves your house and you're incorrectly getting a CTC payment for that child, there's a chance you'll have to repay those benefits at the end of the year. But this is important. The law included protections for families with lower incomes. So for families with incomes below $40,000, $50,000, or $60,000, depending on their filing status, if they are overpaid because a child moved out of their house more than halfway through the year, and they were incorrectly getting payments on their behalf, the families do not need to pay that money back. So I think that the sort of simple answer when you're talking to families is that if their incomes are below these thresholds or sort of lower moderate income families, they will not have to pay any money back, even if for some reason the IRS pays them too much. There's a bunch of information online. We've already heard about this, childtaxcredit.gov. I've included a bunch of links here. I also dropped this PowerPoint into the chat so you can download it yourself and reference these links and resources after this call. So now I'm going to walk through how to sign up for the CTC. Now, it's important to emphasize again, as Jean and others have mentioned, that a large share of families, most families are going to get this benefit automatically. They don't have to take action. 88% of children are expected to get this benefit starting July 15th. Now, if they haven't signed up and if they haven't filed taxes in the last 2 years, and they didn't use the portal that was available last year to claim their stimulus payments, and didn't name their dependents on that portal, then they need to take action and sign up this year. And in order to do that, the families will need to go to the non-filer sign up tool. Now I want to note, because this question was in the chat too, if families use this tool, it will take some time for the IRS to process their information, and then the family will start getting monthly payments. Those monthly payments, if they going forward, if a family uses the tool now, it takes a few weeks for the IRS to process their information. The family may get monthly payments in August or maybe September, but the monthly payments will be higher than if they had filed earlier, right, and started getting them in July. So the bottom line is the IRS is going to pay families out half of their expected child tax credit this year, regardless of when they start paying it out. So if they start paying it out starting July 15th, families will get $300 per child or $250 per child, depending on the age of the child. If they start paying it out later, families will get more each month to account for not having gotten 1 or more months previously. So families should use this non-filer sign-up tool if they were not required to file a 2020 tax return. Families who don't have federal tax liability don't have to file taxes, and so currently it's families whose incomes are under $24,800 for married couples, $12,400 for single filers. Those families who should be using the non-filer sign-up tool. If they didn't file their taxes and their incomes are above that, they will need to actually just file regular taxes, and they can still do that now. So most families will want to use the sign-up tool because it's easy and straightforward, at least compared to filing your regular taxes. However, if families do have earnings from work, they might be leaving money on the table by using this tool because they might be eligible for the EITC and potentially other payments. So it might be in their interest to still take the extra step and fill out taxes. But the non-filer sign-up tool is a lot simpler and easier than filing taxes. So I'm going to focus on that today. This is information you'll need to use the tool. You'll need a computer or mobile phone, as we've already heard. The tool doesn't work particularly well on a mobile phone. You can use a mobile phone. It just takes a lot of going back and forth across the screen to get it centered. and but you need an internet connection, and you'll need certain information. You need legal name, you need the tax identification numbers of parents and the SSNs of kids. You need an email address. So one thing that community-based organizations can do in some cases is if a family does not have an email address, to sign them up for an email address so they can use this form. You'll need the date of birth. You'll need a bank account information if the family wants to get this money direct deposited. I should note that if a family doesn't have a bank account, but they have a reloadable debit card, some of those debit cards have routing and account information that can be inputted into this form, so families can get those payments onto an existing debit card. If they don't fill out this information at all, families will be sent a check in the mail or a debit card in the mail by the IRS. And finally, the other piece of information is the mailing address itself.
Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your sound is a little bit difficult to hear. If you could just talk a little, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Is this better? So to sign up, you want to go to this website, the IRS website linked here. If you Google CTC non-filer, this is the first website that comes up. Google CTC non-filer, and this is the first website that will come up that takes you to this page on the IRS's website, the Child Tax Credit non-filer sign-up tool. You want to click the button at the bottom of the page, which will take you to the free file website. You go to the button at the bottom of that page, click Get Started. And then the next step is creating an account. This is where a family will need to input their email address, create a user ID, put in a phone number if they have one that's recommended but not required, and create a password. Then that takes families to a 2-page form. The first page asks for basic information, including name, filing status, the SSN or ITINs of parents, home address, and also ask people to list their dependents. Now, there'll be some cases in which dependents are eligible for the stimulus payments, but not the child tax credit. So for example, older young adults who are still dependents of their parents might be eligible for stimulus payments, but not the child tax credit. So you'll need to check the box, sort of attesting that the child is eligible for the child tax credit. And that's sort of the basic information. The optional information on this first page is including your bank account information, including an identity protection PIN if you've been given one, and also including the amount that you will be owed for the recovery rebate credit. And I'm just going to take a minute to talk about that, because the recovery rebate question is probably the most difficult to understand on this form. And this is where families could need the most help. So the IRS is asking families to figure out how much they are owed and calculate their estimated recovery rebate credit. And essentially, this is what families should be owed if they didn't receive their first or second stimulus checks, or if they received stimulus payments, but not for every member of their household. In order to calculate the recovery rebate credit, families will need to figure out how much they did receive, if anything, in the first 2 rounds of stimulus payments. Those happened right in the spring of last year, and then again in the winter of last year. And then figure out how much, in fact, they qualified for. And then subtract that and figure out the difference between those 2 numbers. And so families have to do this calculation and then go back to the form and put that number in here where the arrow is and it says recovery rebate credit. There is a link on the form to an IRS manual that provides some information about this, but it's super detailed and honestly pretty hard for anyone to follow. And so that's one area where we think families will need some support. Once they're done with the first page, that takes them to the second and last page of the form. This is really pretty straightforward for families who haven't filed taxes at all. It does ask for personal verification information. If families have filed their 2019 taxes, but not their 2020, they will be asked to put in their adjusted gross income from 2019 on this form. If they did not file their 2019 taxes, then they should just input 0 here. And for the most part, right, there are families who aren't, who might not get this at all, this child tax credit at all, are families who haven't even filed their 2019 taxes. So a lot of families will be putting in 0 here on this form. Then families need to create a 5-digit PIN, just pick a 5-digit number as their identification PIN, put in their date of birth, and then again, optional information, if they have it, input their cell phone number and their driver's license information. The last step is verifying email. There are a bunch of clicks that need to happen, and then families will be asked to submit the form. And I just went through that very quickly. So I also included in the PowerPoint links to other how-to guides. There's an 18-minute video from the Shaw Family Foundation on how to use the tool. There are also 2 step-by-step guides that I recommend, one from the IRS itself and the other from the Get It Back campaign run by the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. I actually pulled a lot of those images you saw in the PowerPoint from the Get It Back campaign's how-to guide. And I also want to just quickly note that there are other resources that will be helpful to families. For families who want to update their information, like their bank account information, they can do that using the IRS's CTC update portal. That's live now and will be improved over time as well. There are free tax preparation services for families who shouldn't use the sign up tool or could, get more money if they actually file all their full taxes. So families should be pointed to those services and VITA sites in particular in their communities if they're available. And then for families who don't have bank accounts, we really want to make sure families get the full benefit from this credit, and they'll do that if they have bank accounts that don't charge large fees or don't have to pay check cashers every month to get the benefit. And so I encourage community-based organizations to point families to how they can get free and low-cost bank accounts. And there are additional navigator sources too that I've included in this PowerPoint. So with that, I'll turn back to Diane.
Great, thank you, Alyssa. That was a lot of information. And I want to just confirm what Amelia put in the chat, that the PowerPoint and a toolkit will be sent out to everyone who registered for this webinar. So you will be getting an email with this information in writing. You can go back and look at it again. And just want to commend the resources in the toolkit and the PowerPoint, because those are great resources to study when you have a little bit more time to answer them. There are a few questions both in the Q&A and the chat, and some of them concern, one question that may be a quick to answer is just, are any of these resources available in other languages and to be consumer facing?
So the childtaxcredit.gov, as Jean Sperling mentioned, is available in Spanish. This Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, has some good basic resources in a number of languages. I think they have those resources in Spanish, Tagalog, Arabic, Chinese, and Vietnamese. And I know that many organizations are also putting out information in multiple languages. I'll drop in the chat some of the CFPB resources.
Okay, another quick question. I thought you said parents didn't need a social security number. However, on step 3, on the first page, it's listed as required.
So for a parent, they would just need to put in their ITIN number, their individual tax identification number on that step if they don't have a social security number. If they don't have an ITIN number, they will need to file their taxes and complete the form to get an ITIN number. So for families who don't yet have ITIN numbers but want to claim the CTC, they'll need to file their regular taxes and request an ITIN as part of that process.
Okay, we have a few more questions, but I need to reserve just a couple of minutes here to talk about the ongoing advocacy we want to do, because it is so important that you all do what you can. And I say this to all my colleagues who are working so hard to get people signed up for this, that we sign up as many people as possible. It is equally important that we try to extend these tax credits beyond this year. The American Rescue Plan included these tax credits for this year, but there is a big advocacy campaign that our organization, the Friends Committee on National Legislation, Bread for the World, a number of other organizations around the country and in Washington are involved in, to try to encourage our members of Congress to support the legislation in the American Families Plan that extends these tax credits and provides other benefits to people that really can make a change for how we support families, both families who are very poor, as well as families who are middle income, and just giving them a boost. And as Gene Sperling from the White House Advisory talked about, if we can get this included to be passed extended for another 10 years, that can make a tremendous difference in the life of children who are 2 years old or 7 years old now, in terms of being able to have a sufficient income for their families to buy the things that they need and provide the kinds of resources of support they need. So we hope that you will advocate with us. Talk to your member of Congress about supporting these tax credits. Think about writing a letter to the editor. Lots of things you can do to help us extend that support beyond that. I think we are just about out of time, and I don't know if I just want to offer, Elisa, do you have any final words, or Ruben, any final words before we close out for this webinar?
Just thank you for convening this space. This is a lot of information, but the resources are out there, and we have to now do the work to get the content out to the communities that we serve. So this is incredibly important, and it will be a shame. Our advocacy efforts will really not be successful if we can't demonstrate that the credits are being accessed.
That's right, and which is why it's so great to have so many partners on this call. We're really happy about that. Elisa, anything else?
Yeah, just to say, this is really dependent on people working on the ground, connecting with families to ensure that families get this benefit. So thank you all for all the work you are doing. And for, we've gotten some questions in the chat about people with very difficult circumstances, and there are resources to help families whose situations are more complicated. I really encourage people to point families to free legal services organizations in their communities to help walk them through how to get this credit if their circumstances are a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for noting that, because we do have situations where people have families, and the question about who actually can claim the credit, and those are probably more complicated than we can answer today. So we understand that, and I think Ruben and Gabriel Salguero both referred to the importance of case managers who can really work one-on-one with individual clients. So hope we can all do that. So thank you to Bread for the World. Thank you to FCNL, to the providers on the ground. Completely agree that it's the people who are actually working directly, and the eligible families themselves who really need to take advantage of this. And we're excited to have the support here in Washington from our lawmakers, and we'll keep pushing to try to assure that it's there on an ongoing basis. So at that, we'll sign off on behalf of Bread for the World and the Friends Committee on National Legislation. Just thank you all for participating, and we look forward to seeing the email and using the resources we send out. Thanks, everyone.